Governor Ducey, welcome to Rise. We're so grateful for your participation today.
Well, thank you, Roger. It's a thrill and an honor for me to be with you today and to be hosted by the Reagan Institute. Ronald Reagan's a hero of mine. He was my first vote. I was in college when he was president, and that's when I came of age, and I want to do everything I can to help advocate and promote the values that he fought so hard for.
Well, that's fantastic. And of course, today we're going to focus on the values around civics and education and the American worker, our workforce. And perhaps I'll start on the education side, Governor. What a year it's been. Disruption is probably the first word we all think of when we think about 2020 and COVID. Certainly Arizona was no exception. How have you prioritized education for Arizona's students, both in terms of policy vision as well as budget?
Well, we've prioritized education. It's the top line for revenue and investment in every one of our 50 states. So we want our kids back in the classroom. We don't think that distance learning has been good for these kids. We have an achievement gap in the United States. It falls squarely down racial and economic lines. Many of these families won't have access to Wi-Fi or enough screens for their children. So we want our kids back inside the classroom. We followed that up with investment. Even when other states were cutting state budgets during pandemic and recession, we were adding hundreds of millions of dollars to our schools to get our kids back in classrooms, and where virtual learning was necessary, that they could access that. So we want to see it not only from a resource standpoint, but the idea that a teacher at the front of a classroom gets better results than distance learning.
So getting them back in the classroom, obviously, in a safe fashion and giving them support they need, a budget priority. Perhaps talk a little bit about the support services students will need to ensure they're able to thrive and learn. I know you've provided summer learning opportunities, support mental health services, other things. What comes to mind when you think about support services that students need to thrive?
So for me, it's an all of the above strategy. We want to get our kids caught up. We want to get them to grade level, but we also know, as difficult as the pandemic has been, there's been other unseen consequences that have come from this. So additional dollars for counselors, summer school, one-on-one instruction, tutoring if necessary, acceleration academies, literacy coaches. These are all the things that we think we need to do to not only bring our kids up academically, but to deal with whatever other issues that happen. Our teachers are our top reporters of abuse and other things that happen inside our schools. And when the kids aren't in the classroom, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to do over a screen. So we know we've got some catch-up work to do, both in terms of the school work and mental health counseling and the tender loving care that our teachers are able to give in the best scenarios.
Yeah, that's one of those things perhaps we didn't fully appreciate that our teachers in schools do for our students, the awareness, the ability to take care and give us insight into their emotional health. You know, one thing you mentioned in this State of the State address, I'll read your words back to you. He said, quite a few parents have found temporary educational options they want to make permanent, and that you would not, quote, be funding empty seats. Tell me more about what you're getting at in your State of the State address, and perhaps what more broadly the pandemic has shown us about school choice and what Arizona can do to promote it.
Well, Arizona leads the country in school choice. It's something we're very proud of. We, of course, have traditional public district schools. We have public charter schools. We have private schools, Catholic and Christian schools, homeschooling as well. And we're innovators in some of the pods and different things that are happening in terms of across our state, and you see in other parts around the country. We've got over 550 charter schools in Arizona. The public charter is open to everyone. And we've got nearly 20% of our children inside these schools, and they're getting incredible results. And what we want to do is have funding follow the child. And we want the parent to have the options that are necessary. They're the ones that know how to best engage their children and get their children educated, as well as when a child needs a change of venue or a change of place. So we're going to continue to fund the child, and we want to pay for education inside the classroom. And that's what our budget's going to reflect.
You mentioned the funding following the child and kind of empowering the parents, not your words, but that's what I took away from what you just said in terms of the decisions there. You know, something else that's on the mind of parents, I'm a parent of 5 and think about this, is civics education, the civics mission. One thing that you've led on, and it's something that we have an affinity for here at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation Institute, is you signed into law in March, the Sandra Day O'Connor Civics Celebration Day Act. Of course, President Reagan nominated Sandra Day O'Connor as the first woman on the Supreme Court. Tell me more about that act, and more broadly, your priorities for this civics mission, both in education, in the classroom, and beyond.
Well, the American Civics Act was the first law I signed as governor, and we were the first state to pass the American Civics Act. And I think there's 36 other states now that have followed suit. Of course, we're incredibly proud of Sandra Day O'Connor here in Arizona. I think the anniversary of President Reagan appointing her to the Supreme Court was celebrated yesterday. And in so many ways, Sandra Day O'Connor's life was a living civics lesson. I know the presidency of Ronald Reagan, and especially the last year of his presidency, he went out of his way to make sure people understood the heroes that built this country and the importance of civics, and let us know that freedom is not passed on in the bloodstream, that we pass it on to our children one generation at a time. So we wanted to do that not only through the American Civics Act, but the Sandra Day O'Connor Civics Day of Celebration. That's September 25th of every year. And that's where a day of instruction is committed to civics, as well as recognizing civics scholars and putting scholarships out there, not only for juniors and seniors in high school, but also at the university level, to get more of this engagement in American civics. We think it's important that young people understand this. For whatever reason, it was not being taught in many of our classrooms, and unfortunately, what's tested does get taught. These are things that people should know. The American Civics Act wants a high school graduate to know the same answers to the same question that a new naturalized American knows. And I think we can have such better debates and discussions and actual decisions on what issues and values we want to push and promote when people understand their civics.
That's fantastic. And I guess my thought, it's a great start. You have this day dedicated to it. That's a very compelling point that our students should be able to pass the same test that someone wants to become a naturalized citizen needs to pass. Is one day enough, Governor, or do we need to do more? Is this kind of the floor or the ceiling for what we can do?
We need to do more. I think we need to do more around American civics and American history. We want to have informed and educated citizens. So as proud as I am of the Civics Act, the Sandra Day O'Connor Day of Civic Celebration, the civics core and leadership that we've put out there, I think that there's more that we can do around this, and we need to focus on it. And that's the great thing about being a governor, is we're very collaborative and collegial, but we're also competitive. And when we passed the American Civics Act, I saw all other governors from both red and blue states. I mean, Jay Nixon, Democrat governor, former governor of Missouri, was my co-chair at the National Governors Association to promote this. So I think there's a lot more that we can do. And where I actually got the idea to pass this into law was at a dinner with Charles Krauthammer, speaking from the right, and Richard Dreyfuss, speaking from the left. And basically they closed out their debate by saying, you can see that we don't agree on anything, accept the importance of American civics and our founding documents. And all their arguments were founded in the basis of those documents.
Reifus and Krauthammer, if they come together, there's obviously some opportunity there, and really congrats to you and your leadership for taking the charge and having so many states follow the lead of Arizona. You use this language of making the students informed, and that's what we're trying to do. President Reagan's language in his farewell address, as you might recall, was he's seeking informed patriotism, people to understand what the red, white, and blue actually means. And so that's a great set of accomplishments in your part. We only have a little bit more time left, Governor, but I do want to talk a little bit about post-secondary education and workforce, since it's been such a priority for you in your time in office, and it's such a challenge across the country. How do we keep our workforce educated and skilled for the modern 21st century economy? Arizona is home to 3 public universities. They've been innovative in their approach to serving students and local communities. Tell us about how you've supported traditional 4 universities as well as community colleges through this challenging time, not only COVID, but also just all the churn and disruption in our economy.
Well, we're very proud of our 3 public universities, Arizona State University in Tempe, University of Arizona in Tucson, and Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff. The universities, along with our community colleges, the largest community college system in the country, are all part of this upskilling and reskilling of adults. Of course, we want to focus on K-12 education. There's no better gift than we can give a young person to have options coming out of high school to make these decisions. But we know we live in a dynamic, rapidly changing economy, and we've got many of our adults that need that change of pace, that specific education, so that they can pursue their version of the American dream. So it's in dollars, of course, to our universities, over $100 million in this year, to our 3 public universities. And our public universities were not only helpful, they have helped in terms of digital and online learning. In many ways, Arizona State has been a founder and innovator of this. And at the university level, you can have a lot more effectiveness than you can at the grade school level with digital learning, although I'm still a big fan of getting young people inside the classrooms with their professors and with their peers in those social settings as well. So that's something we're going to continue to focus on, and I'm grateful as well to our universities for their help during COVID-19, not only on the educational front, but also on the testing front. Dr. Bobby Robbins at U of A led the charge in terms of development. We supported him with $3.4 million. And Michael Crow has won the distinction for Arizona State University as the most innovative university in the country over the last 6 years, on top of institutions like MIT and Stanford. So young people in Arizona, as well as adults, have access to a quality education to complete their education or to become reskilled to enter this competitive economy that we have that's really growing in Arizona and across the country.
Yeah, I want to talk about community colleges in a moment, because I know you've done a lot there as well, and it's a key piece, I think, in this education equation. But you use this language of upskilling and reskilling, and you've been so innovative, and as Arizona has been so innovative in terms of using universities to help people mid-career. Is it a function of dollars alone, that if you can help someone who needs to be upskilled, or is it also the programmatic side, that even if you had the money there, it's not enough to get someone to really motivate themselves and invest in reskilling or upskilling?
It's a great question, and we believe it's a combination of both. And I think my background in the private sector has been very helpful, because what we want to do is not only listen to the academic leaders and to the young people and the students and the adults that want to pursue this education, but also talk to the private sector. You know, in a place like Arizona, we have more jobs available than we have people to fill them, sometimes 3 or 4-fold of the employment pool. So to talk to the employers and then to make a credible case to prospective employees and adults of how this curriculum will prepare you for a career that's high skill, high paying, and high tech. Has been something that's allowed us to move a lot quicker, get a lot more people into the workforce, and also attract companies. I mean, the fact that we have businesses like Taiwan Semi, the $20 billion investment from Intel, Lucid Motors, Electrica Mechanica, Nikola, these are all businesses of the future. They all provide great employment and careers, both for young people coming out, but existing adults that need work. And we want to work together so that we can elegantly fill those needs.
Well, the technology piece you just mentioned, semiconductors, I mean, it's a huge need across the country. We're all feeling it in terms of the automobile we want to purchase, but it's not available right now. And Arizona's taking the lead in making sure we can have those semiconductors built in the U.S. And what we're talking about here is making sure they have the workforce in Arizona that can fill those jobs. Before we close out here, Governor Ducey, I do want you to comment just on community colleges and what you've done. In the research in advance of this conversation, there's been a substantial amount of money put forward to community colleges, and perhaps a new vision in terms of how many years and what community colleges can provide to students beyond what we've come accustomed to in the past, is 2 years and you transition out.
Community colleges are a secret weapon. They are able to adjust and adapt much more quickly than even our incredible universities. And it's not just the community colleges in places like Maricopa and Pima, which is our largest population centers, and they do a terrific job. It's our community colleges that have been in rural Arizona, where young people often don't have access to the larger cities. And we've listened to the community colleges, and we've listened to the students, and we've also allowed our community colleges to provide 4-year degrees where necessary, so that our kids and young people and adults can access that education in their own residence and their own geography at much lower cost. And we want to be supportive of that, both financially and with the adjustment in the curriculum, so that they can learn what they want to learn and then, like I said, pursue their version of the American dream.
Governor Ducey, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm so grateful for your participation in RISE 2021, your leadership across civics, education, and preparing the people of Arizona for the workforce of the 21st century. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Roger. It's my pleasure, and it's a real honor to be involved in anything with the Reagan Institute. Thank you for having me.